What's the problem with pedagogy? I want to say a little bit about the GDST's approach to teaching and learning. If you think about education as a triangle and pedagogy as one of the vertices, the other two are curriculum and assessment. And of the three, pedagogy seems to be the one that the teacher has most control over. After all, if you think about assessment and curriculum, they're both heavily controlled from outside. The national curriculum, benchmarking and key stage tests, the sheer dominance of GCSE over key stage 4, and the influence of higher education over sixth form curriculum and exams. But if you think about it a bit more, pedagogy itself is heavily influenced by exams, by curriculum. It influences not just what we teach, but to some extent, unfortunately, how we teach it. But again, pedagogy is affected by the fact that it is part of the evaluation of the effectiveness of a teacher. And that leads to the unfortunate primacy of the lesson observation. Now, we reject the tendency towards judging teachers on the basis of a limited number of snapshots where the teacher feels constrained to an all singing, all dancing kind of performance. It's not a snapshot, it's a process. Research shows that much of what makes for effective teaching has already been put in place well before the pupil has sat down and switched on. We know from research that effective teaching can be identified principally in terms of classroom management, the expectations we make of students, the relationships we build up with the students, the personal qualities that teachers show, like fairness and respect. Now, they aren't created afresh every time a new lesson starts. They're established over time as a relationship of confidence and trust develops between teacher and students. And they constitute structures of management of the classroom, support and feedback. And these things, again, research shows, hardly vary for an individual teacher from one lesson to another. They're constants. But one thing does vary, and that's the way a teacher teaches, depending on where she is in the course. Now, teachers adopt roles that change with the task in hand. At the outset of a unit study, the teacher as presenter might be prominent. But over time, that gives way to the teacher as instructor, working with students to handle simple problems. But then student-activated learning can take over, with the teacher acting either as consultant or even participant. And then towards the end of a course, revision and test prep might well demand another role still. So any one classroom snapshot will capture a mix that's appropriate to that stage of the course. Now, the implications of that progressive approach to pedagogy, I think, are several. One is that school leaders need to evaluate teachers using a whole lot of evidence. Lesson observations, yes, but not in isolation. Pupil performance data, yes, but in context. Pupil feedback, a whole basket of factors and pieces of evidence. We should encourage teachers to model in their teaching the kinds of dispositions we want to see in our pupils, the joined-up thinking, the linear rather than modular mind, risk-taking and mental agility. We want to encourage teachers to treat education as a journey and teaching as a narrative arc. It's not about individual episodes. It's about a narrative emerging across a whole course. It's about sustained pedagogy. We want to restore subject teaching to the core of education by bringing curricular and pedagogic initiatives into our mainstream teaching. There's a tendency, there's a temptation to take recent initiatives like P4C, the creative curriculum, critical thinking, the EPQ, and bolt them on to what already exists. But we want to embed the sorts of skills and dispositions that are being developed there in our mainstream subject teaching. And finally, we want to encourage teachers to use research evidence and reflect on what works for them and their pupils. Pedagogy is a partnership.